The Gamecocks got back in the win column last Saturday night, scoring a season-high 56 points against UNC Charlotte, and now they'll prep for a short week as they'll take on South Carolina State Thursday night. Joining me to break that down and take a look back to last week is Locked On Gamecocks podcast host Andrew Lyon. Andrew, the Gamecocks enter Thursday night 11-3 in their last 14 games played on a Thursday. Your reaction to the game being moved up, and do you think that gives the Gamecocks the advantage or the Bulldogs?
In terms of any advantages that both teams might have, obviously for the South Carolina Gamecocks, they're going to have the advantage of maybe having a couple of extra days looking ahead to their opponents next week against the Kentucky Wildcats. In terms of maybe any disadvantages, the Gamecocks do have a bunch of guys who are currently injured at this moment in time. Guys like Darius Rush, Alex Boogie Huntley, Dylan Wonnum, who are all starters on their team. They probably would have liked to have a couple of extra days in order to have those guys maybe more healthy and have a higher likelihood of them playing. So in essence, that is an advantage for the South Carolina State Bulldogs. Now, in terms of the Bulldogs and a disadvantage that they have, the Gamecocks are going to be facing a FCS program that probably would have liked to have all the time that they wanted in order to prepare to face an opponent that is a Power 5 conference team in their own state. And it's also going to be a little bit less time for the South Carolina State football team to maybe get their emotions in check a little bit, as obviously this is going to be a game with a lot of emotions, as South Carolina State has got a ton of players from the state of South Carolina on their squad. And as a coach, you want to have maybe as much time as you can get in order to have those guys sort of flush that out of their system. South Carolina State's not going to get that now. So again, another advantage for the South Carolina Gamecocks. So it kind of cancels out, but both teams definitely have their advantages and disadvantages heading into this matchup on Thursday night.
Now, last week on Gamecock Extra, you said the Gamecocks needed to establish the run in order to get the offense going, and they did just that. 295 yards on the ground. Marshawn Lloyd made one of the best plays you will ever see by a football player, hurdling over a guy. He rushed for 169 yards and 3 scores. Your thoughts on the performance of the Gamecock offense, particularly the Gamecock backfield?
It's quite apparent that offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield and head coach Shane Beamer came in with a game plan that they wanted to establish the ground game early, and that's exactly what they did with Marshawn Lloyd. They ran a bunch of inside zone and halfback counter concepts on offense. They kept things kind of simple in terms of what they actually ran, just pretty much ran the same stuff over and over again. But obviously, if it's working, then there's no need to try to reinvent the wheel per se. Marshawn Lloyd obviously showcased everything in his toolbox on Saturday night. He did have a highlight reel type hurdle over a 49er defender, which led to 1 touchdown, and also showed a lot of ball carrier vision and even some power with a bunch of stiff arms against 49er defenders. The tight ends deserve a lot of credit as well. They did a great job in terms of their kick out blocks in this game against Charlotte. So hopefully this is the kind of game that can serve as a confidence builder for this South Carolina offense, who had desperately needed to have a performance like they did in the rushing attack against the Charlotte 49ers, and they're going to look to try to carry that into this game against South Carolina State and going forward for the rest of the 2022 season.
And on the other side of the ball, the Gamecock defense forced a season-high 3 takeaways. They only had 1 interception entering last Saturday night. So do you think that that's a performance this defense can build on going forward?
Obviously, I think that this, kind of like the running game for the offense, was something that was needed for this South Carolina defense. Of course, whenever you can get a turnover in a football game, it's a big deal because you are essentially stealing a possession away from your opponent and giving your offense another chance to put more points on the board. Obviously, like you mentioned, South Carolina had struggled mightily doing that up to this point in this season, but a lot of the players on this roster are some of the same players that they had this past year when they led the SEC in takeaways overall. So if you're a South Carolina fan, this is the kind of game where when you have a couple of new starters that are in there, whether it's due to performance or whether it's maybe due to some injuries that have taken place, this is the kind of game that can definitely serve as a momentum builder in terms of creating turnovers. And I think that part of the reason that this happened was because Clayton White called a lot more blitzes up front. We saw a lot more 6-7-man blitzes on this defense, and it clearly rattled the Charlotte 49ers offense to a great extent, which led to most of these turnovers. So when you combine all those factors together, I think this is definitely something that South Carolina can carry over into the South Carolina State game and the Kentucky game and the rest of their games going forward. And, when it comes to turnovers, it can make or break maybe you having a win or a loss at the end of a football game. So certainly something that the Gamecocks are going to try to carry over into the rest of their games during this season.
Final question for you, Andrew. The Gamecocks are 2-2 entering Thursday night. The Bulldogs are 1-2. What are you hoping to see from USC on Thursday?
Honestly, Chandler, I'm just hoping to see South Carolina story build on what they did against the Charlotte 49ers and carry that into their game against South Carolina State. So am I saying that, of course, they need to rush for maybe 300 yards once again? Not necessarily. This time, I would kind of like to see them be able to try to balance it out a little bit more. Of course, you could still rely on the ground game a little bit more than maybe the passing game per se, but, try to build off some of those run concepts that work so well. Try to use some complementary plays, like some play action concepts, in order to try to build up Spencer Rattler's confidence, because, you're not going to be able to probably go out there and just run the ball for all 60 minutes and expect to defeat teams like Kentucky, like a Florida, like a Tennessee, like Clemson. So offensively, you need to get the quarterback's confidence up now with Spencer Rattler. And if you can get the passing game to feed off the running game, then that's something that would be a great objective to accomplish this week against the Bulldogs. On the defensive side of things, you got to get off the field on third down. We saw this issue continue to sort of be a prevailing problem against the 49ers this past weekend. The Gamecocks are going to have to do better in terms of being able to sort of not allow opponents to sustain drives offensively, because it's causing this defense to get worn down consistently throughout the course of this season. And with how many times it's happened up to this point, this is something that can really wear on this defense once we get into late October, early November, and beyond. So this defense, through one way or another, they're going to have to find a way to get off the field more. Again, we saw them do a little bit better in the second half against Charlotte. So try to carry that over into the South Carolina State game, continue to build up that confidence, and try to carry that over into what is now going to be a longer time of preparation heading into a pivotal SEC matchup against the Kentucky Wildcats.